Hello, you. I'm trying something different today. I have my laptop here with some notes because last week I told you that I was going to cover how I frame, not just how I frame my talks, but how I structure the messaging, the content I cover, and the resources. But then something happened that made me change my mind, and I'll do that next week. But before I get started, just see out here. I don't know if you can see it. Looks like rain on the window, but it's snowing. Maybe I'll show you the front here. I'm just parked in a parking lot. Yeah, between drop off and getting some more shoes because the kids' feet have grown again, so gotta get some more shoes. But I wanted to cover, I'm following my intuition, new moon in Pisces today. So for those of you who are into astrology or know a bit about that, I am a Pisces rising. So I'm doing all sorts of first house things this week, which is like, you know, all about you, how you present yourself, how you show up. So this is timely. Let me just look at my notes here. I'm usually good at talking off the cuff, but I know based on what happened last week that I need to refer to these points because I misrepresented myself to you. I said last week, oh, I'm not an event expert. I was bringing my kids into business settings, and I'd gone to some conferences and some events, and then I decided to host my own events. And then the very next day, you know those memories you get on social media that are like 5 years ago today, 10 years ago today, 15 years ago today. Right after I posted that live stream and that video replay, I had a memory come up that said, on this day, 15 years ago, this is what was happening. And it was a picture that I had from a private gallery tour I had facilitated for the Governor General, the former Governor General of Canada, Michael Jean, at the art school that I worked at, the Ottawa School of Art, which is a great school. It's a national school in the nation's capital, downtown. But there was an artist, Karen Bailey, doing an exhibition, and the Governor General is the patron of the school. So we facilitated a private tour, and I even helped her write her message for the guest book. So that memory, the photo of me with the executive director with Michael Jean and Karen Bailey popped up. And then it was like, so just going back to that was 15 years ago. And I used to host, I was the marketing and events coordinator. So my literal job title was events coordinator. And this is what the mind does, right? And also it could just be, I have 3 kids. Last night I slept in my toddler's bed, could have been sleep deprivation, but I have 3 kids under the age of 9, and I have a brain injury. I have invisible disability that is new to me in the last year and a half that I'm learning how to live with and work with. But in that moment when I said, oh, I wasn't an events expert or I didn't have a lot of experience, that's not true. And maybe I was trying to be more relatable, or maybe I was trying to be more low key. Maybe I just simply forgot the things that I've done. But that was the 15 years ago memory. And then right below it was, and then 10 years ago, you were in New York City with your clients from Australia. And I remembered, oh yeah, that was a company that I used to present webinars for. I started managing their webinar program. That was 13 years ago now. So I managed a webinar program, which was online events across the country. Plus, they asked me to speak at the webinars. Within the first month of me starting, they asked me to start presenting webinars for the CEO, the webinars that the CEO used to present. And then I was asked to speak at the conference on the same topic. So I'm telling you this not to be like, oh, look at all the stuff I've done, but to remind you of the fact that the brain, the mind, will play tricks on you, and it's a bit of the ego. It's the ego side that wants to keep you safe, that wants to make you less visible, that wants to minimize your accomplishments or your goals. And that reminder, so that was 15 years ago, I was doing these events at 5 gallery spaces across the city and 2 campuses, hosting monthly and promoting monthly gallery exhibitions, plus annual fundraisers and other events. and private visits and things like that. Then I was in Australia and I was doing webinars and I was doing conference sessions. I did a private or not a private workshop, but you had to register for the workshop at the conference. But I was teaching people in 2012 how to use LinkedIn for business. And it was people within the education and training industry. So I was doing this workshop for about 40 to 50 people at the conference. And then 2 years later, I flew from London to Adelaide, or to Brisbane, and then to Adelaide to present on the same topics I used to present on for the webinars for the CEO. And that was done as like a plenary session or kind of like a keynote session in a room, in a conference room. So I just want to clear that up, that I did have events experience. I don't know why I minimized that, but also that's not to say that you need that in order to be a speaker or a presenter. It's just to give you context that I did a lot of work behind the scenes. I was also writing ministerial speeches when I worked at the Queensland government and planning industry events with other media officers and doing media, I forget what they were called, but the media comes and we do press releases to issue like a media call out. So they come and they do live filming, and I worked for the Department of Food and Agriculture. So there was like biosecurity issues, and then there was we had launched the first food policy for the state in their state's history, things like that. So I wrote the minister's speech for that launch and for launching industry grants for $2 million and all these things. And I was always behind the scenes doing the writing, doing the coordinating. I'd be the person off to the side, like, mic check 1 2 1 2. Let's make sure this mic works before someone does their speaking, or asking the audio, the AV team, is this set up correctly? And then when we relocated to Canada, I was doing events again. I was doing live stream panels with media in tech, and doing industry conferences and panel events and CEO breakfasts. So I was hosting breakfast events at like 7:30, 7 a.m. For this private CEO network in the city. So not sure what I was thinking last week when I said, oh, I didn't have this experience, but I guess because I was behind the scenes a lot early in my career, I kept being like pushed into events where I was like, you can speak about this, here's the mic, or you can do this. And I was not necessarily volunteering for those things straight away. And even I was volunteering with a local sports club. So I had signed up to be a volunteer board member. Well, I actually signed up to help them with their social media, and then they asked me to be on the board. And then again, I got pushed into this PR role. I wasn't even good at the sport. It's like a hybrid between like baseball, golf, and field hockey. It's called hurling. It's Irish, and I'm Canadian, and I had played all those other sports, but not hurling, which is for women. It's called camogie. But like, I took it up to meet other people when we lived in Australia, and then I interviewed one of the board members for a broadcast journalism project, and then he was like, hey, you've got some good ideas, do you want to come to some of our meetings? Then I went to the meetings. Then they said, hey, do you want to be the PRO, or do you want to put forward for the PRO? So then I got nominated to be the PRO, and then the next thing I knew, I was speaking on the radio about these hurling and camogie games and the recaps and the stats, and I had no background and knowledge of this sport. I had never grown up with it. Most of the people I played with were Irish. One of the other women was from Hong Kong, and we were like the token non-Irish people in Australia playing an Irish sport. And I even got I even got interviewed for a documentary while we were there, and I was speaking on a documentary film. So I just want to remind you that just like showing up is enough sometimes, and just, putting yourself out there is enough, but like, you don't necessarily have to be setting out with like, I'm going to speak here, I'm going to do this. It does help if you want to manifest that more quickly, but sometimes when life presents opportunities and you maybe weren't planning on doing that, but the opportunities brought up, or for me, it was like, we need something in a pinch, and I didn't want to let people down. That's probably like my people pleaser was like, sure, I'll do that for you. And then in the background, I was totally that duck paddling under the water, trying to look calm on the surface. But then when it came to hosting my events for parents, I had all that background knowledge. I had done the run sheets, I had done the speeches, I had done the press releases, I had done the promotion, I had done all those things that helped inform how I wanted the experience to be for parents and how I wanted to have like the quality of the event be this level, but the accessibility be way more realistic for parents. So good morning. I see someone is on the live, and if you're going to watch this as a replay, or if you're logging on after the fact, I have my laptop in front of me and I have some notes here because, as I mentioned earlier, I don't always talk about this openly, but I had a car accident a year and a half ago, have some invisible disability stuff from that, and one of the things is a brain injury. So you might notice when I'm speaking, sometimes I might trail off or forget a word. Sometimes I say the wrong word, but with the right first letter. And sometimes I just get tired. So I'm trying to do these more in the morning, because by the second half of the day, my live stream speaking isn't as amazing, but I'm also trying to show up just as I am. And this is all the experience I have leading up to that moment. And just because I have a brain injury, I don't feel like giving up things or stopping things. I just have to modify them. And if you're dealing with chronic pain or chronic illness or disability or anything like that, where you have to pace yourself, I still want you to know that I have done some speaking since, and I have used the stuff that I've already created beforehand to inform what I'm doing now. So that whole saying that's like the, start today, start now, that's so true, because if I hadn't started years ago when I first had kids, I wouldn't have as much work or, I guess, speaking topics or ideas to inform what I'm doing now. So this session this week, or this live stream this week, I just wanted to share, I kind of wanted to go inward, because last week I said I was going to share how I do my content, how I mind map my ideas. I'll cover that next week. But this week, instead of going broad, I wanted to bring it in and get you thinking about yourself. And I have always kept kind of like a ta-da list instead of a to-do list of, these are the things I've done, this is the feedback I've got. I file my positive emails or any screenshots or things where people respond to my work or to what I've done, or to something I've created that's helped them. I try to capture those things, not just to use as, say, like testimonials on my website, but there are things that people have shared with me privately or personally that I put them in my file in my email, and I refer back to them, especially if I'm having a low moment, or I'm thinking, oh, what's the point of this? Is anyone even gonna read this or use this or whichever? And that is a good thing to do for yourself, not just for your momentum, but because the mind will trick you, and it will try to minimize things, and it'll try to say oh, who be you to, it's like mindset, I guess, versus your biological brain. Because as a human, your body is trying to keep you safe at all times, and public speaking, being on stage or being on a microphone or being on an interview, being on the radio, being on a webinar, speaking out into the void like this, not knowing if people are listening, or not knowing if the audience is responding to what you're saying, or just not having that experience firsthand if you haven't done speaking or pitching yet, the mind will try to, or the body will try to keep you safe, and you have to kind of counteract that with as many positive things that you can to remind yourself of, you deserve to be here, you deserve to be heard, you deserve to be seen. What you have to share is going to help other people. So some ideas for you, besides taking screenshots and filing away your emails, this is a scary one if you don't do this already, asking for testimonials and feedback from people. Usually, if I've done a talk or a webinar, if you have a survey or a simple, I've done printout, rate this talk 1 to 5, circle the 1 is not helpful or not good. 5 is great, loved it. And then a couple lines for actually putting in a testimonial or feedback. So I'm in a parking lot right now. You might hear some car doors closing around me. Some people are getting into their car. But yeah, asking for testimonials on LinkedIn or via email or in person. If you're doing the talk, the best time to do it is straight away. And if you can from the stage, or if you feel comfortable after Q&A, before Q&A, to say, hey, I have some things over here. If you have a book or any resources or anything hard copy that you're able to set out, you can keep your surveys or feedback things there. And you might feel embarrassed doing this, but I have gotten some really nice testimonials and feedback from people. And if you really help them with the topic that you're presenting on, they won't hesitate to share what they think about it. And if someone puts their hand up and asks you a question but says like, oh, I love this so much, thank you so much, you can say, great, hopefully you'll have time to write on this piece of paper, or I'll send an email after or a survey out after, and you'll be able to respond and share that. So you shouldn't feel shy or scared about asking for testimonials. You can reach out to previous clients, event attendees, peers, or employers. It's never too late to begin doing this. I've started doing this again. 2025 we're in. I've been going back to people that I've worked with over the last few years, some of them since 2017 I've worked with them, and they responded to me within a week saying, of course, you can use me as a reference, or of course, I will, agree to this. Because if the quality of the work you did with them as either a client or an employee or employer, colleague, if the quality of your work was, representative of your integrity and your values, and you gave them great results, then you shouldn't feel shy asking for these things. So never too late to begin. Capture those moments, the words, the momentum, and the experience. And that's more to do with if you're doing a public speaking engagement in the moment. Because if you don't, who will? I have been filmed in some of my talks on video, but also having professional photography done by the event organizer, and they'll send those photos to you after, or they'll link to them. But if you don't have, I guess, that setup or that AV setup, then no one will know about your talk unless either you ask if you can set up like a tripod with your phone, or get someone in to film your talk for you or help you, or if you just can't ask for these testimonials, or you didn't feel comfortable doing it, no one will know about this talk except for like one line on your bio or on your website that you mentioned the talk. No one will actually know like what was the result of the talk, or what did the audience think. So think about how you can get creative with that, and then look at writing down the things you know. So last week I covered the lessons that you can share and how that might inform your talk title. And the week before that, I was telling you how I've learned to frame what I'm going to say to keep it simple and to keep it on point. And next week, I'll cover how I kind of go broad, mind map things out in order to come up with some core themes and resources for the talks or the pitches that I've been doing. And so what I want you to start thinking about, in addition to this to-do list, getting testimonials and feedback, is start writing down, like I had just mentioned, 15 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, things. What were you doing? What jobs were you doing? What skills do you have? What things have you helped people with? What are the organizations, either volunteer or work related, that you have worked with? The types of client projects you've worked on, the kind of skills that you're known for. And if you've been out of the workforce for a little while, or you've had a career pause, you can also write the kinds of things that you enjoy doing, and the things that the environments you enjoy being in, the things that you're drawn to doing, and the things that you know you could help people with, or the skills that you have from that area of your life. So I'm going to leave you with this. Even if you don't think you're qualified, even if you're like me and you were trying to be low-key or less visible, I want you to remember, gosh, I wrote this last night on my phone. Being humble doesn't mean you can't also be visible. Being kind doesn't mean that you can't show the receipts and the feedback from where you've been, what you've done, and how you can help others. And being low-key doesn't mean that you need to undermine all of the lived experiences through work and through parenthood and life that you have had contribute to making you who you are and why you want to help other people, or why people might want to listen to you. Those things are all important, and no one's going to know about them if you don't start documenting them, using them to refer back to. And the other beautiful thing about this process, in addition to getting you to show up and take up space, is it serves as a good ritual and reminder, kind of like a post-event wind down thing to do, but also a pre-event pump you up thing that will help remind you of why you're here, why people might want to listen to you, and what you can bring to the conversation and how you can help other people. So that's it for me from today. And next week, I'll be back with some tips on developing your content and your resources, but also the different ways that I've made my talks more memorable and different things that you can do or use to try to do the same. So have a good day, and I'll talk to you next week. Thanks for listening.